Yo, what's up guys? We're back for another breakdown and predictions video, and this one, it's going to be a pretty good card, man. I like this card, UFC Vegas 79. It's a fight night card, but pretty stacked. We got a good main event, we got a good co-main event, and a lot of good fights throughout the whole card, so definitely intrigued by it. I'm going to be excited to break it down. So right before we get started, just like the last video, man, I would really appreciate it if we hit the like button and got as many likes as possible, 300 likes. Just everyone listening to me right now, hit the like button and let's try to get the likes way up because I would really appreciate that. And last week we did really good on the UFC. We got one prediction wrong and we had the draw as well. So I guess technically two wrong, but one where it was a push and the other one where it was a loss. And besides that, we did really well betting wise, and we're going to be looking to do that again on this UFC card. So you know where to go for all the best bets, and it's patreon.com/MMAPredictionGuru. There's a Bellator this week that I'm looking into right now. I got one bet on there. I'm going to be adding a few more, and already got a few bets for the UFC. And Bellator has like 21 fights, so it's kind of a daunting card to look into, but definitely a lot of spots to potentially make money. So this is a good week to come over to Patreon. And besides that, let's get in this first fight of the night here, though. We got Montserrat Rendon. She's taking on Tamires Vidal. And Vidal, she's getting back in the octagon. It's been almost a year of inactivity for her. She had a really good debut in her last fight. She won via flying knee in the first round. She got 50K, but tried to come back 4 months later versus Haley Cowan, pulled out, and I'm not sure what the issue was. It was an undisclosed injury or medical issue, but it's taken her a while to come back, and hopefully she's 100% here. She's 25 years old, so I don't think the layoff is going to pose a big factor. If Vidal stayed in the gym, stayed active, and at least has been able to train for a while since the issue happened, she probably will be improved. And with Montserrat Rendon, she's making her UFC debut. She's 5-0. She's 34, so if she wants to get things going in the UFC, she has to win now and start stringing some wins together pretty quickly. And she's currently training out of a smaller gym in Mexico and looking to continue that Mexican wave in the UFC. And this is a step up in competition for her, though, so it's going to be a test. She hasn't really beaten anyone too good as of late. Her last fight with Brittany Cloudy, who has kind of a suspect record, but I feel like is a decent fighter. She won, but it was a kind of a controversial decision in that one. But I think this fight really could go either way. Both girls, to me, have pretty bad striking. Vidal is more dynamic, but she's unrefined, and Rendon is basic. She'll throw 1-2. She's a little bit rigid. She's slow, robotic, and she has good kicks. She'll use feints, and her speed is usually a lot better than who she's fighting, and she is going to be a lot faster than Montserrat as well. Her last fight, she obviously landed that flying knee to the body and earned the finish. And I think Rendon, though, with her steady pressure, her straight punches, her chin, her cardio, it's going to give issues to Vidal too, because Vidal, as much as she has her kicks, her speed, and kind of the more dynamic attacks, she pulls back with her hands down, chin high, and I think Rendon is a little bit more technical and a little bit just more of a solid striker. And Vidal is the better grappling, but I think Rendon is a little bit stronger physically. I think maybe she could do well in the clinch too. When Vidal can get on top, she's dangerous. She has good submission. She has leg locks. If it goes to the ground, Vidal should have the advantage. She's very strong in the clinch, and she can hold fighters against the cage. But I feel like in this fight, cardio for Rendon is going to be on point. I think she should try to push the pace, and she's going to have the cardio edge, and that could be the difference in the fight. I think unless Vidal can get her out of there early or in the first half of the fight, Rendon's probably going to take this. I think she has the better boxing. I think she's going to throw more lane cleaner, and I think she could control the clinch. Keep it standing, push Vidal against the cage, wear on her with your size. And ultimately, I think her cardio is going to be the difference. And I think Vidal is the fighter with more potential, but I think right now Rendon is a little bit more consistent, a little bit more refined, and that's going to lead to her getting this upset victory here. And this next fight, we got Mizuki. She's taking on Goldie, and this is kind of a weird fight. It's a difficult fight to break down because Mizuki, she hasn't fought in 3 years, but if you look at her old fights and her resume, she deserves to be the favorite in this fight and a big favorite like she is. And it's going to be Goldie who's coming in here and is going to have to kind of prove that she's leveled up, or Mizuki has kind of went down in level since the layoff. She had a knee injury, I believe, but she's only 29 years old, so I don't assume that if she's been working. I know that she trains with her brother and all that, who's a good fighter as well. I think she'll be just fine and come back good. She is coming off that loss to Amanda Lemos, which that's a hard fight for anybody, and she didn't do terrible in that fight. She had some moments, but just kind of came up short there. And then she had the other win in the UFC where she beat Yanan Wu, which isn't a great win, but 1-1 in the UFC overall. And then Hannah Goldie, she kind of came back herself off a long layoff recently, and she ended up fighting a couple times since then. She got knocked out by Molly McCann. She got the submission win against Emily Whitmire. And, so she's kind of been up and down herself, and she's not necessarily, to me, the best fighter overall. She's a physical girl. I mean, you just look at her and you could tell she's yoked up, but she gets a hold of you and she can body lock you, get on top of you. She's probably going to feel like a boulder on top, and you could tell she has good ground and pound. She has pretty solid submission game overall too, but I feel like her striking is pretty poor. I mean, she has okay kicks, and she tries to keep the range and kind of pull you into her takedowns, but she doesn't have much power at all, and her hands are kind of non-existent. So if you can get past the kicks, nullify the wrestling, which isn't like she has super high-level wrestling, and get into that boxing range or clinch type of range, you could really beat her up pretty good, pretty easily. And, I feel like Mizuki, she has that type of style. She comes forward, good high guard, good pressure. She throws the 1-2s, the 3-2s, and she keeps that consistent offense. She has good volume. She also has good grappling as well, so I don't think that Goldie is just going to be able to manhandle her or take her down and dominate her in that manner. So unless Mizuki, comes back and she looks like a totally different fighter, or she just lost her mojo completely, then I feel as if she's probably going to run away with this one and could even get the finish in this fight via KO, TKO, or win via decision. One thing about Mizuki, too, is she's fought girls that were pretty big, like her fight with Wu Yanan. Wu Yanan came in at like 129 pounds, and she also had another fight with Amanda Lemos. She's a really big girl, so I feel like this fight, it's definitely better for her in terms of size as well, and I think she's the more skilled fighter. So I got to go with Mizuki, and if she wasn't coming off this long layoff, I would say that she actually would get it done inside the distance, but just because it's been a while since we've seen her, it's kind of hard to know if she's going to come back, as the same Mizuki that we last saw. She might ease her way into it, so I'm going to say it's a decision win. And this next fight here, we got kind of a strange fight. It's another typical type of heavyweight fight. Two guys that are not the most trustworthy, not the best, but it should be, fairly fun to watch. I think this one at least, because Jake Collier, he usually does bring it, even if he only lost one round recently, he does a good job of coming in there and bringing some action. And then we got Mohammed Usman, who's more kind of a grinder, cage wrestler, and we saw him go in there against Junior Tafa, his last fight, nullify Tafa, and pick up the win that way. So I feel like that's going to be kind of the similar battle here. It's going to be Jake Collier is going to come out hot early. He's going to be using that jab to set up his combinations. He's going to be throwing some long combos. He's probably going to be mixing in some leg kicks if he's smart. And I think he could, really get the better of it on the feet of Usman. Usman's a guy that kind of really sloppy, rudimentary striking. He just kind of wing shots, and he has power. He's fairly fast and explosive at the heavyweight division, but real stiff guy. And, any guy that's a good striker with good evasive movement, nice eyes, are going to probably avoid almost anything that Usman throws and be able to counter him pretty easily. But the thing that Usman brings to the heavyweight division is his pace, and he has good wrestling and good grappling. I wouldn't say he's the greatest wrestling, but a lot of heavyweights, they can't wrestle, at all to save their lives sometimes. So he can hold guys against the fence. He could take them down, and he has the ability to do that for 15 minutes, as we saw in his last fight. He's also tough. We've seen him get hurt, survive, and stick in there and come back and do better as the fight continued. And Collier, he is someone that he tends to, after the first round, he slows way down. You'll see him shoot bad takedowns and end up on his back. And when he gets on his back, you can usually finish him. He's kind of a turtle off his back. And I feel like Usman is going to be the first fighter that he's fought at the heavyweight division that pushes the wrestling. Right now, Collier has fought all opponents in the heavyweight division where none of them have actually shot a takedown and went to take Collier down or even attempted it. So Usman mixes in some takedowns. If he goes in there and can push him against the cage, I think he can eventually wear him down and probably get him out of there in the later rounds via KO TKO. I just don't trust Collier at this point. I did see that he looks like he's in a little bit better shape for this fight, but who knows? I mean, if he comes in on the scales like 240 or something, then maybe it's like you could start to think he has a better chance at victory. But at this point, I think Usman's going to show that Collier still has that hole in terms of cardio. He's going to push more of a wrestling pace. I feel like his last fight, he fought a guy that was much more of a dangerous striker. And even though Collier has better grappling, and if Collier can get on top of Usman, take his back, we've seen him do well there. I just don't think that's in the cards for him in this particular matchup. And I think a guy like Junior Tafa poses a lot more threat on the feet, where I think Collier is going to be the most dangerous for Usman in this fight. So Usman is a guy that I think is still improvement. Usman is a guy that I think has the cardio, and I feel like he's going to be able to go in there, use his wrestling. And this next fight, I'm not a big fan of this fight, but Jacob Malkoun, he's taking on Cody Brundage. It's low-level fight, but I think Malkoun's clearly, way better. I don't really know why Brundage is still in the UFC. We've seen what he is now at this point. He's a guy that's pretty much a first-rounder bust fighter. He goes out there, he has decent hands early. He'll have that Factory X kind of technical striking style, but falls apart pretty quickly. And he also has the wrestling where maybe he could take you down and submit you or finish you with the hands early, but if you can't do it in the first round, he gets tired. Guys could take over the fight and end up finishing him. And Jacob Malkoun is just a consistent guy who has decent jab, good forward pressure, and tries to take you down, grind on you. And he's not really a finisher. He's never had a finish in the UFC, and all his wins are via decision. So I feel like, obviously this fight he has his best chance to get a finish, but it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Second and third round, if Brundage has a guy that's kind of not pushing the pace as high and letting him survive a little more, if he can get a second win or something. But ultimately, I just have no faith in Brundage getting the win here, so I'm not going to give a super technical analysis or big breakdown of this fight. I just feel like Jacob Malkoun is the guy that is going to have the more consistent offense over 3 rounds. I trust him to be more durable and stick in the fight better, and I think he's ultimately probably going to end up getting the victory here, whether it's a decision or whether it's a finish in the later rounds. I think Jacob Malkoun is going to be the one getting the job done. And this next fight, we got a guy that I've been a fan of for a while with Tim Means, and he's going to be taking on Andre Fialho, and it should be a striker's delight. I mean, Tim Means is a guy that's 39 years old at this point. He's had over 20 UFC fights, so he's definitely closer to the end than the beginning, and the writing is a little bit on the wall. And Andre Fialho, he's more in the beginning of his UFC career, but already looks like he might be on the way out, so he needs this win. He started off hot. I mean, he had that loss to Michel Pereira, but it was short notice against a guy that was up there in the rankings, and he dropped him, so it was a good fight. And then he had back-to-back knockout wins in quick succession. But since those wins, he just hasn't been able to put it together, and he's gotten finished 3 times in a row. Tim Means is also on a 3-fight losing streak, so someone's got to turn it around here, and I think the loser's probably not going to get another UFC fight. So it's a big fight for both guys, even though it's a prelim fight and both guys are on a losing skid. I think it's definitely a pivotal fight for their careers. And Andre Fialho, I mean, the guy comes out really good early. He has great pressure. He has good footwork, and for the majority of the fight after the first round, he's very low volume. But in the first round, he brings it. He throws a lot of strikes. He's throwing the straight punches. He's throwing uppercuts and the counter left hook that's nasty. And he has big power in his hands. He's real crispy with his combinations, and he has tight boxing. So early on it's going to be dangerous for Tim Means because Tim Means also likes to get in there, get in the pocket, stay in your face, and exchange in that boxing range. But I don't think Means is quite as tight with his defense. He gets out of position a little bit more, and I think Fialho could make him pay early. But Means is also an extremely tough, durable guy. We've seen him get dropped, survive, come back, and get the win, even as recently as his fight with Max Griffin. And I feel like Tim Means, if he can get out of the first round in this fight, it's going to have a big advantage. I mean, we know that the guy's going to bring the consistent pressure. He's going to have the good jab. He's going to be having some solid, slick boxing in his own right, and he's also going to be mixing in that clinch work. I also think Tim Means should look to wrestle in this fight and mix it up because Fialho, you see when he has to defend takedowns or when he's taken down and has to get back up or taken down and held down for the entire round, his gas tank goes down majorly. So I feel like if Means can mix it up, which he's been doing more recently, and even if he's not as effective with the wrestling, I think that he can go out there and do really well cardio-wise if he can get Fialho in that type of fight. So I'm going to go with Tim Means just because I think he has more ways to win. I think he can bring it to the ground and mix it up. I think he can get the finish in the later rounds, and he has the better striking long term. I think Fialho, after he has that burst in the first round, he tends to get very tired, slow down, and I think that his volume is just non-existent. After a while, he becomes a punching bag, and he's a tough guy with good durability, but his chin has been getting cracked recently. He got knocked out pretty bad against Buckley, and he's coming back, fairly quick off of a knockout. I feel like Tim Means, he can go out there, and I think he can survive that early left hook danger, early danger with the hands from Fialho, and end up getting the job done in this fight. So I'm going to go with Means. I'm going to say he wins in the second or third round via KO, TKO, or submission. I just think Fialho is going to slow down. Means is going to turn it up on him and get him out of there. I could see Fialho finishing Means in the first round potentially, or rocking him and getting him hurt in the first round and Means coming back. But I think if Fialho can't get the job done in the first round, just historically from what we've seen, I think Means is going to be able to go out there and drown him eventually. So give me Tim Means in this fight, and I think he's going to end up getting the finish. And for this next one, we got two former wrestlers going at it with Dan Argueta. He's taking on Miles Johns. And for Argueta, he definitely is more of a wrestler in MMA. He does a good job of pushing the pace and using his wrestling, whereas Miles Johns has had cardio issues, and I think that's why he doesn't like really embracing the grind and wrestling for 15 minutes, and he's kind of settled more into using his jab and low volume striking and his explosiveness and power to control the pace of the fight, and then maybe hitting a takedown at the end of the round occasionally or something like that to steal a decision. But yeah, these guys match up good. I mean, Miles Johns definitely is probably going to have the edge on the feet, even though Argueta is getting better. And Argueta, long term, like later in the fight, if Miles Johns slows down, could have success standing. But just technically, Miles Johns is going to be faster. He has that jab that he goes to that's pretty nasty. And I think if he can land the jab and get the jab going, he could maybe land a backhand, big overhand, big straight that hurts Argueta. But I don't know if necessarily he's going to be able to rely on his striking over 15 minutes like that, because Dan Argueta is a guy with a great forward pressure, great durability, and I think he could eat a lot of the strikes that Miles Johns throws, even if Miles Johns ends up getting his range and making it a wrestling match like we saw in Miles Johns' fight with Cole Smith, for instance, where he couldn't really stop Cole Smith, who's a similar style, straightforward, good durability, likes to wrestle, and he couldn't really stop Cole Smith from pressing him to the cage. And I think with Argueta, it's going to be the same thing. And Argueta, I think, is a little bit craftier on the feet as well. I don't think it's going to be as much as a mismatch there, because Argueta's decent with his footwork as well. He's pretty fast himself. I don't think he's quite as fast as Miles Johns, but he can switch stance. He can come in and throw big overhands after the level changes, and they can connect big hooks. He has some all right power from what we've seen. but he definitely is a guy that wants to get in these wrestling exchanges, kind of try to create scrambles with guys until he gets them tired and then takes their back and finishes them, arm triangles them, or ground and pounds them out, or just ends up grinding them out for 3 to 5 rounds. He just has a great gas tank. He's going to be on the pedal for the full 15 minutes. And I just think Argueta is just going to be too much. I think that it's going to maybe be Miles Johns early, having some success. But as the fight goes on, I think we're going to see that kind of change. I think we're going to see Argueta start to be more effective with his wrestling and just creating these scrambles, maybe getting to the back. And I do think eventually Argueta maybe will finish him on the ground with the submission. I just think that he finishes the majority of his fights. He pushes a high pace. And I'm going to say that he kind of gets Miles Johns tired, breaks his will a little bit, and then either arm triangles him or finishes him with a rear naked choke or some sort of submission in this fight here. So I'm going to go with Argueta. I'll say second or third round submission. And Ricardo Hamos versus Charles Jourdain is this next fight. And this should be an entertaining fight. We haven't seen Ricardo Hamos fight in a while. Charles Jourdain is coming off that win over Kron Gracie where he pretty much dominated a guy that was very ineffective on the night. And this one I think is going to be a much tougher fight. I mean, Hamos, he's still a young guy. He's a little bit older than Charles, but still young in his own right. And he's going to be improving. He's training with good guys. And Charles Jourdain, to me, more of a showman type of fighter. I know his last fight he stayed within himself. He did well, but I feel like if guys want to get in a war and embrace that type of fight, he's going to go there. And I don't really ever trust Jourdain to move up in the rankings or become a viable top 15, top 10 guy unless he changes his mentality like I do Hamos potentially. But they're just two different kind of fighters because you look at Hamos, he's very explosive. He has an ability to strike off the front foot or the back foot. On the front foot, he's a little bit wild. Like he'll throw those jumping kicks, flying knees, things like that. And then he does have a good left hook. But he could also fight off the back foot, kind of try to pull you into his left hook or 3-2s. And he has fast hand speed. But the issue with Hamos is just he doesn't have good head movement. And he doesn't like getting hit. I think he's gotten a little bit tougher, a little bit more mentally in there in terms of embracing a war. But if Charles Jourdain can land some vicious strikes on him to the head, to the body, we've seen Hamos kind of wilt, crumble before and kind of give in. So that's going to be a good test for him here to fight a dangerous striker. If he does get hurt and is able to persevere and end up winning, that's going to show something new from him. But in this fight, I think Hamos is definitely going to try to push the wrestling. I mean, the guy should have a big advantage there. He is good at getting to the clinch, and from there he can get to the back and drag you down. He has a nice double, too. And Jourdain, even though he defended the takedowns with Kron, I still am not really sold on his grappling. I mean, I think that Hamos is just as good, if not better, of a takedown artist and backpacker that Shane Burgos is. And we saw how effective Burgos was for 2 rounds against Charles Jourdain. It's just Charles Jourdain had that third round where he hurt Burgos on multiple occasions. So is Hamos going to be able to survive those moments where Charles Jourdain comes in with those signature blitz attacks or, the wild striking that he does bring and not get finished? But it's a tough one. I mean, I feel like it definitely is like a 50-50 fight, and I think the line's a little off. So just because I feel like Hamos should be closer to a pick'em than where the line is at now, I'll say Hamos goes in there and wins via decision, just is able to take Charles Jourdain's back a few times, take him down, be competitive in the striking, and just not get hit with those killer shots and get the victory. So I'm going to go with Hamos in this one. I think it'll be a fun fight, back and forth fight, but I think Hamos will win. I feel like he is a little bit further progressed than Charles. I mean, we've seen him beat Bill Algeo, a couple good guys that have good kicking, good kind of dynamic striking. So I think that he can go out there and get the job done over Jourdain. So I'm going to go with... And this next one, we got 2 prospects going to war here with Bryan battling AJ Fletcher. I feel like it's a good matchup. It's a good test for both guys. Bryan Battle, he's been pretty impressive he's gotten 2 knockouts in less than a minute in his last 2 wins. Last fight winning there against Gabe Green as the underdog and took him out super quick. So he definitely is going to have some confidence, some mojo. And AJ Fletcher is coming off a finished victory himself. He finished them a Greenbow with a nice guillotine. But AJ Fletcher has a little bit more work to do. Bryan Battle is the guy that's a little more established. He won the Ultimate Fighter. He has multiple UFC wins, multiple UFC finishes. AJ Fletcher only has 1 UFC win so far. He has 2 losses where he lost to Matt Semmelsberger. He lost to Ange Losa. And those guys I feel like are pretty high level. Those are hammers. Those are tough fights to fight early on in your career. So nothing to be too ashamed of, especially with the performances. But he does have those L's on his record. So he's a guy that I think is in more dire need of a win here. And this is a good matchup, though, because Bryan Battle is going to be a big guy compared to AJ Fletcher. He used to fight at 185, 10-inch reach advantage. And I think that's going to be a big factor. I think if these guys are similar size, AJ Fletcher would be clearly the better fighter. But Bryan Battle, with those advantages that he does bring to the cage, it's going to be interesting because if he can keep it on the outside with his kicks and with his straight punches, snipe Fletcher, maybe he could catch him and get him out of there. But I do feel like AJ Fletcher with this pressure, his hands, I think his striking is underrated, man. I've seen a lot of people act like he's takedown or bust in this fight. He has no chance on the feet, but I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, we saw Tresean Gore do well against Bryan Battle in the stand-up for periods of the fight when he let his hands go, and I feel like AJ Fletcher, we watched him fight another guy in Angelosa, who I think is a great striker. I think the guy's a good fighter. We just saw him beat down a guy who was a highly touted prospect, and AJ Fletcher hung with him just fine on the feet. I mean, the first round was competitive, and the second round he rocked Ange Losa, almost finished him. Third round, Losa took him down, held him down, and that's really where AJ Fletcher has found the most issues in his career. Is he's not good off his back, and his takedown defense needs work, but his last fight he showed improvements with that. I mean, he was able to scramble after getting taken down a couple of times by Themba Greenbow, eventually ended up getting a guillotine, and I don't envision Bryan Battle trying to take him down. I mean, you've never seen that be a part of Battle's strategy. Usually Battle is the opposite type of guy where he has to fend off takedowns and he's looking to use defensive submissions like front chokes or counter chokes or things off his back and win that way, or get back up to his feet with his get-ups and use that anti-grappling to get guys tired and then finish them striking or decision them. And AJ Fletcher, I think he can mix it up, and he is the better wrestler. So if he gets Bryan Battle thinking all striking, he could get some takedowns. But I don't necessarily think that's going to be a huge part of his game plan. I think that people are going to be surprised that the striking is a lot closer. I think if Fletcher can get on the inside, he's going to have the better boxing. He's going to have the better volume. He does a good job attacking the body. And I think Fletcher has some sneaky power as well. Losa's a guy with a great chin, and we saw him really rock him pretty badly. And I also think, Fletcher, he's had issues with cardio in the past, but Battle isn't a guy that necessarily really pushes a crazy pace or has a lot of experience in longer fights where I think he can really exploit that and make that an issue. So I'm going to go with AJ Fletcher in this one. I know he's the underdog, and I know there's a big reach disparity there. I know Bryan Battle has looked really, really good when he lands. He's been finishing guys with one shot. But AJ Fletcher, he's never been finished in his career. I think if he can get on the inside, he can make the striking very competitive, have more volume and more short-range power, and be able to potentially do well in that boxing range. And I think he can mix it up with some clinch control. I think he can get a takedown or two. Battle, to me, is just still unproven. I mean, maybe he'll go out there and continue to win, continue to just level up and not take another loss. But I think that these really quick knockouts are not going to happen too often, and we're going to have to see how he looks over 15 minutes. And the last time we saw that with Fakardinov, he basically lost almost every minute of the fight. And with Tresean Gore, who's also a lower level guy that I would say is lower level than AJ Fletcher. It was a very competitive one, and that was at 85, but I just have to see. I mean, we haven't seen Battle really outside of the Fakardinov fight go any sort of length at 185 or at 170 either, so I'm going to lean towards Fletcher here. I just feel like he's going to be able to implement his game plan a little bit better, and I think he's going to be a little bit more consistent over the longer fight. I think he has higher level experience in terms of fighting some good guys over 15 minutes, and I think that's going to pay dividends. So I'm going to go with AJ Fletcher, and I'm going to say he gets the win by decision. This next one, we got Marina Rodriguez taking on Michelle Waterson-Gomez. This is a rematch of a fight that not really sure why they put it back together. I know the first one was under some weird circumstances, like they took a main event fight on like 2 weeks' notice against each other, and they fought at 120 or 125 or something. I can't remember, but it wasn't at 115. So with this fight, they did both have more notice for each other, and they're also at their original weight class, so it should be a closer fight. I feel like Marina was a lot bigger than Michelle on that night, and maybe the sides will be a little bit closer this time. But both these girls aren't really doing too great in their careers right now, even though I think Michelle Waterson deserved to win her last fight against Luana Pinheiro. She's on a losing streak, and Marina Rodriguez, after really, maybe you could argue, getting jerked around for the title shot a little bit, where she was on a long win streak, never got the opportunity. Now she's on a 2-fight losing streak, and it's going to be tougher to build back because both these girls, her and Michelle, are a little bit older. So, but this is a good bounce back fight for me for Marina Rodriguez. I mean, the first fight, I didn't see anything from Michelle that really lets me think she's going to win. This one, she struggled a lot with the range. Her kicks were not landing. They weren't that effective, and every time she tried to blitz in with the hands, Rodriguez was meeting her with counters, and Rodriguez was, staying high volume like she always does, always sharp with the straight punches in the Muay Thai. And Waterson, even the couple times she got in and got really deep double underhooks in the clinch and had good position to potentially get a takedown, Rodriguez was able to defend, get back to space. And her last fight with Rodriguez was 5 rounds, so we did see Rodriguez slow down a little bit, and Waterson built back into the fight in the championship rounds. But this fight's only 3 rounds, and I just don't think, unless Marina Rodriguez is kind of aged overnight and Waterson is still alive a little bit more than her, or maybe her confidence is shot with the losses, I don't see how she loses this one, because I just think it'll be a replay of the first fight with Michelle Waterson really struggling with the distance and the range, and Rodriguez just being able to pick her off and win a striking battle. So I'm going to say Marina Rodriguez goes in there and gets the win via decision in this one, and kind of a repeat of the first fight here. And in the co-main event here, we got Bryce Mitchell taking on Dan Ige, and this should be a really interesting fight. I mean, Dan Ige, he's kind of got his swagger back, where he had the losing streak. Now he's came back with back-to-back wins, knockout win over Damon Jackson. He got the decision win over Nate Landwehr in his last fight. And Bryce Mitchell, he was undefeated technically, even though he did have the loss on The Ultimate Fighter. And took his first loss, but it was against Ilia Topuria, who's fighting for the title next. So obviously he wasn't fighting a slouch. And so Bryce hasn't fought in like over a year, or almost a year. And he's also been having like a lot of issues outside the cage, like with his girlfriend and all this weird stuff. So mentally, I kind of question how much Bryce Mitchell is all in. Like, I really wish Bryce Mitchell would go to and join like a real MMA gym. Like right now, I think he still trains. Maybe he goes and trains with that gym in Arkansas as well, but I think he does a lot of training on his farm with kind of guys that he brings in, and he has a cage there and things like that, where it'd be really beneficial for him to go in there with a coach, someone that can settle him, and whole, team of people that could really optimize him. And maybe he does have that, and I don't know, but I just feel like it doesn't seem like it. And yeah, I just don't know how I just don't really trust where Mitchell's at right now in his life and his career. And Ige, I feel like, is doing good. And Ige, it's kind of funny. Like, I was thinking about this. Like, he's like killing all the Southern guys, man. Like, he beat up Damon Jackson. Then he beat up freaking Nate the Train. And now he's gonna fuck up Bryce maybe. So I don't know why they're always sending Dan Ige to all the Southern boys. But yeah, I feel like it's like pretty easy fight to break down, right? I mean, if Bryce Mitchell can get him to the ground, where you've seen Dan Ige kind of have some issues in the past with takedown defense, then we know Mitchell's a beast on the ground. I mean, the guy can transition, chain submissions together, and he has really good top control, solid ground and pound, and he also knows when to just stick in a guy's full guard and beat him up if they're explosive and they have a good ability to stand up, like we saw in the fight with Edson Barbosa. So Ige definitely needs to try to avoid getting put on his back. And, man, he has the best gym in the world almost to do that, you could argue, with Extreme Couture. And we've seen him level up in that aspect. Like, he definitely hasn't fought a guy that I believe has the wrestling ability of Bryce in a while, but he did stuff the takedowns of Damon Jackson. He stuffed a couple on Landwehr. And if he can keep this fight standing, I think Bryce Mitchell can be competitive, but I don't necessarily think he has the power or the technique to win that type of battle. I think that Dan Ige is going to be able to be the superior striker and land big shots, like big power shots, which Bryce Mitchell, I feel like he's a guy that sometimes he can look for the way out when he starts to get hurt. Like, all his losses are, he's been finished. He got finished by Brad Katona. He got finished, I believe, as an amateur. And then he also got finished by Ilia Topuria. So most of the time when you beat Bryce, you're taking him out of there. And another reason why I'm talking about him maybe mentally not being the strongest sometimes is because after his last fight, just the reaction to the loss, he was talking about he was going to potentially retire and he wasn't as good as he thought. And then he's now saying that the fight doesn't count because he was sick. So hopefully, he's got his head on straight, because I think that he's kind of all over the place sometimes. And Dan Ige is the exact opposite. The guy just had another baby. So he has that new motivation. He's 32. He's a little bit older, more mature than Bryce, but he's still kind of in or around his prime in terms of athleticism. And he's probably the best he's ever going to be right now. I mean, the guy is very well conditioned, big power in his hands, solid striking, good boxing, and definitely going to have the edge there. And I think that he's proven that he's not a slouch on the ground. I mean, the guy's a black belt. We've seen him stand up against Mohammed a few times after being taken down. So I'm just slightly leaning towards Dan Ige. I just think that on the feet he has the edge. I think if he has his grappling and wrestling defense on point, he could take this win going away. And I think that he can go out there and get the win over Mitchell, who I don't necessarily know if he's 100% all in on this MMA career. I mean, we're going to see, but I think that he could be doing things different in his life that would give him better opportunities to potentially move into that title picture. So I'm going to slightly lean towards Dan Ige here, and I'm going to say he gets to win inside the distance too. I'll say he wins via KO TKO. And in the main event, we got an awesome fight, man. Clash of styles, kind of classic matchup, striker versus wrestler, grappler, and two guys that are in their prime of their careers that are hungry for a win, man. I mean, we got Rafael Fiziev, who he's coming off that loss to Justin Gaethje, where it was a very competitive fight. He dominated the first round, but then Justin Gaethje put a lot of damage on him, beat him up, and we saw Fiziev kind of slow down, get tired, like historically he's prone to do. And he let Gaethje take the fight. And with Gamrot, he is coming off a win over Jalen Turner, but very close win. And he's still trying to separate himself a little bit from that loss to Beneil Dariush, which happened right before the win to Turner. So he had the long win streak after the loss to Guram, and then he ended up losing to Benny. He's on a one-fight win streak now. But if he can beat Fiziev, he'll be right back in that top 5, top 3 type of range, looking at a potential title shot. And the same thing happens on the Fiziev side if he can beat Gamrot. So this fight for both guys is a huge fight for their careers. I mean, I feel like both guys are going to stick around in that top 15, top 10 for years to come. But this is going to be who's going to be the kind of first one to the title, or the one that gets and ends up getting a title shot, or eventually getting to that level. And it's a great clash of styles, like I said. So very intriguing matchup. First of all, I feel like Gamrot always gets disrespected on the line sometimes. Like against Sarukian, he was a huge underdog. And in this fight, he's not a big underdog, but he's still an underdog where I feel like it should be closer to a pick'em odds in this fight. So, but it's going to be fun. I mean, I feel like Fiziev, we know what he brings. The guy has elite level Muay Thai, and he's super, super athletic. So we see him with extreme level hand speed. He has an ability to land kind of one-shot knockouts. He's very explosive. His kicks are extremely dangerous. And he has good takedown defense as well. We've seen it. But I feel like his wrestling defense isn't elite level, and he's never fought a wrestler like Gamrot. We did see other guys be able to get in on his legs like RDA, and RDA did take him down a couple of times. And the difference between Gamer and RDA is Gamrot's going to be taking a lot of shots in the open mat where they could potentially be a little bit more dangerous, but since he shoots a lot of low singles, it's not as dangerous, and it's going to be taxing, man. I mean, RDA, he likes to shoot his shots when he can back you to the fence, and it's like a hard double leg, and it's easier to defend takedowns along the cage, and you don't have to necessarily defend as many of them because he has to get you in the position where he's comfortable shooting, whereas Gamrot brings the dynamic that he could shoot 30 takedowns a fight. I mean, we saw the fight with Sarukian. I mean, those guys are freaking scrambling like cats on the ground. It was crazy. So I feel like, that's going to be a big factor in the fight. I don't feel like Fiziev, he's not necessarily super high volume, or I don't think he's going to be that in this matchup. I think he's going to try to hang back and look to find that counter knockout on Gamrot. But I feel Gamrot, he knows his striking isn't on that level, and he's going to push the wrestling and the grappling, but he has been making strides to improve his striking, and I think that could pay dividends in this fight as well. And we've seen Fiziev get knockouts, but we've also seen him go to decisions with guys that aren't necessarily on Gamrot's level, so I don't think it's like he's going to easily be able to knock him out here necessarily. I could see it being fairly competitive on the feet just because Fiziev could get frozen up with the takedown threat, and that could leave a lot of openings potentially for Gamer to land as well. But I kind of see this fight being a cardio battle, man, and I think that if it was 3 rounds, that would favor Fiziev majorly, but since it's 5 rounds, I'm leaning more towards Gamer, man. I think that he could shoot a lot of takedowns. I think he could make it a taxing fight. He's never been finished in his career. One thing I'm a little worried about is recently he has been getting knocked down a lot. Like he got dropped against Turner. He got dropped against Benil. He got dropped against Sarukian. He got dropped in his fight with Kudrtaladze. So eventually maybe him getting dropped is going to turn into him getting knocked out. But I'm not going to say it happens here. I think that he is going to come in here and be able to push that wrestling pace. I think it's going to make Fiziev very hesitant, nullify a lot of what he wants to do on the feet. And I think that Gamrot's going to have the better cardio. I mean, maybe the first round and a half, maybe even the first 2 rounds, we'll see Fiziev go out there, maybe stuff a few takedowns, land some big shots, look like he's doing some good work on the feet. But I think eventually we're going to start to see him get taken down, give his back, allow Gamrot to get in on his legs a lot easier and start to really push that wrestling pace. And I think when he does that, I don't think Gamrot's going to be able, or I don't think that Fiziev's going to be able to survive that pace. So I'm going with Gamrot in this one via decision. I think that as the underdog, I like that as well because I think it should be closer to a pick'em type of price here. So I'm going to go with Mateusz Gamrot, and I've been really good at picking Gamrot's fights, so I feel like I have a good read on him. Like, every fight he's had in the UFC outside of the Cody Toladzzi fight, I've predicted correct of his. So I am going to go with Gamrot in this one, and I think he's going to win via decision 49-46, maybe 48-47. And I think he's going to position himself right back in that mix for the title. But I do think Gamrot still needs another iteration or another evolution in his game to compete with some other guys in the division. But I do think this is a good matchup for him. So going with Gamrot to get the victory in this fight. So thanks for watching, guys. That's a full card breakdown and predictions video for UFC Vegas 79, UFC Fight Night Fiziev versus Gamrot. As far as my part of the week and my most confident pick goes, for my most confident pick, I'll say Marina Rodriguez. And for the part of the week, I'll go with Mizuki, Marina Rodriguez, and Jacob Malkoun. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll be back soon breaking down another fight card. Like I said at the beginning of the video, like this video up, man. Everyone that's hearing me right now that hasn't liked the video, hit the like button. Let's try to get 200-300 likes. And besides that, patreon.com/PredictionGuru. We got Bellator. We got a few other events. LFA, ACA are putting on shows. I don't know if I'm going to get to those, but I'm going to try to. And yeah, guys, thanks for watching this video. And I'll be back soon breaking down another fight card.